Think about what the Bank for International Settlements said about gold. Number one, it runs no counterparty risk. All your debt, all those debt contracts, that's all counterparty risk. It is gold held at home runs no geopolitical risk. So, if you look out there is so much geopolitical risk. It is a proven inflation fighter. Global central banks, when you stop and you look at it in a recent survey done by gold.org on central banks and their attitude toward gold, 7 in 10 central banks have said they plan on increasing their gold purchases, because whoever holds the gold is going to be able to hold their power, hold their choices, and hold their freedoms. Yeah. That's really what's at stake, is your freedom. Your freedom to choose, the freedom to live. My grandkids, that's who I do this for more than anybody, or my children and my grandchildren and the great-grandchildren that I don't know yet. Because if we don't make this stand now to real money, and that's why the central banks are buying it, we're at the end and everybody knows it. Yeah. So central banks are definitely buying gold so that they can remain in control and in power. And that's exactly the same reason that individuals should be accumulating gold. 10%, that's nothing, right? You need to do as much as possible, as quickly as possible, because we don't know when this game is going to end. There are too many things that are erupting that we can't see because it's kept away from our purview. But when we do see it, I got news for you. It's going to be way too late to do anything about it. All of this free money was about keeping the system going, growing more debt till they can get the next piece in place or the next iteration in place, which their goal is for it to be central bank digital currencies. My goal is for there to be a component of gold that is convertible from whatever that new currency is, because until they do that, it's not over. This isn't over. Yeah, the writing is on the wall. It has been since 2008, but it's speeding up very quickly now. We've got, you don't hear anything about the LIBOR SOFR shift. And I was just reading an article earlier today about private equity and the debt that they hold and how that debt is tied to LIBOR. Wait a minute. LIBOR goes away in 2 weeks, the end of this month, and they're still talking about these mountains of debt, and you can't get a straight number. This is a global hyperinflationary or hyperdeflationary. It's the same coin, just the opposite side of the coin. And they still, when you listen to the talking heads or you read the papers, they always talk about it as if it can go on and on and on. And, oh, hey, buy this stock because it's going up, and buy this bond because interest rates are really high. And then when the interest rates go down, they'll go up, and blah, blah, blah. But you can only convert that garbage into this garbage. But people need to understand that we have the only reason why any of the currencies are viable right now is because the public still trusts them. But the public does not trust the Congress, does not trust the government officials, and the markets do not trust the central banks anymore because, hey, forward guidance, they gave up that confidence level. Central bankers don't trust central bankers. So and banks don't trust banks. And we saw that in the interbank lending in 2008. So since 2008, keep in mind, this is a Ponzi scheme. They can only get away with it if we allow them to get away with it. I think we need to stop them from getting away with it. And how do you do that? You vote with your wallet.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. The banks that went out in March, that was just a little snicker snack of what's to come. because this is true. I don't care if you're JP Morgan or you're the smallest community bank. This is true for every single bank, every single financial and corporate entity. Look at private equity. All this debt, to your point, Daryl, all of this debt that was taken out under the zero interest rate policy. Well, guess what? As interest rates go down, the market value goes up. They could borrow against this higher market value, but that's now flip-flopped. So they're all underwater. When all of this debt has to roll over, they can't borrow as much because it's not worth as much. So what are these corporations going to do? They either have to come up with more equity or borrow less, which means they have to come up with more equity, or they're going to declare bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then that's a ripple effect, right? That's like a domino effect, rather. Me personally, I am not a trader. I am quite clear on what's happening in the monetary system because I've studied currencies and currency life cycles since 1987. I know how deeply I dig into this stuff. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to have the lion's share of my wealth in an overvalued asset or instrument, meaning stocks, bonds, all that, ETFs, mutual funds, annuities, all that garbage. It makes no sense for me to hold my wealth there when there is not one doubt and all of the evidence, it's not wishful thinking. It's just all of the evidence is that the only thing you can convert them into, this garbage, is losing value. Because last time I checked, 1 trillion times zero was still zero. You know, as an ex-banker, as an ex-stockbroker, and as somebody that is crystal clear, I'm going with the global central banks that have bought more gold than they have, going all the way back to the 60s. And what was happening in the 60s? We were transitioning into a new monetary system, one that was at that point quasi-backed by gold, to one that was backed by, to your point, the central bank's ability to just print more money and take on more and more and more and more debt, right? But the reverse is happening now. And the global central banks that have raised those interest rates have popped that debt bubble that has been in the works since the early 80s. And there is absolutely zero doubt in my mind, none, because this is how they do the transfer. We need this next crisis to scare people enough. And I think what happened in 2020 and 2021, it was a test. What can we get away with? How much can we get people to listen to what we're telling them to do?